I had just come back from work. I thought I'd surprise her, let her, but as I neared the bedroom, I heard something else. My brother's laugh. And then I heard it, her voice. You need someone who can actually take care of you. Someone who knows what they're doing in life. In bed. I had just come back from work. My shift ended early because of some equipment malfunction. I thought I'd surprise her, let her know I was coming home ahead of schedule. Maybe we could finally go out for dinner, talk about our future. Instead, I pulled into the parking lot of our apartment complex, my stomach twisting, knowing something wasn't quite right. The lights in our bedroom window were on, but it wasn't the usual soft glow from the desk lamp where she liked to work late into the night. No, this time, it was brighter, harsher. My steps were slow as I made my way toward the door. A soft murmur reached my ears from inside. I wasn't thinking much of it. Maybe she was on the phone, maybe with a friend. But as I neared the bedroom, I heard something else, my brother's laugh. Damien. It cut through the air like a knife, unmistakable in its familiarity. A laugh I knew all too well, the kind he used to make when he had the upper hand, when he knew he could take something from me, and I'd have no choice but to stand by and watch. I stopped. My fingers brushed the handle of the door, and I hesitated, wondering if I should just leave it alone. Was it just a coincidence? A casual conversation between friends? But no. The way his voice lingered, the subtle edge of smugness, told me everything I needed to know. And then I heard it, her voice. You need someone who can actually take care of you. Someone who knows what they're doing in life, in bed. I stood frozen, the world spinning around me. She wasn't just talking about us, she was talking about him. My brother. The words were cutting, each one making my chest tighten with rage. She was choosing him, wasn't she? I pushed the door open. It wasn't even locked. And there they were. Damien was sitting on my bed, our bed, his long frame stretched out, looking like he owned the place. Her legs were crossed, sitting beside him, too close. Their faces were relaxed, comfortable, almost casual, as if they hadn't just destroyed everything. As if they hadn't completely betrayed me. What the hell is this? I managed to say, though it came out higher than I expected, my voice already cracking with disbelief. They both turned to look at me, their expressions far too calm. No shame. No guilt. Just annoyance at the interruption. Damien smiled, that smile. The one he always gave me when he knew he had one. Parker, he said, his voice smooth as ever. I thought you were working late. Equipment failure? Sienna looked at me, and for the first time, I saw something cold in her eyes. We were just talking, she said, the words dripping with an air of finality that made my stomach churn. I stared at both of them. My heart felt like it was being ripped in two. This wasn't just some casual conversation. This was a calculated attempt to destroy everything. To take what was mine, everything I had worked for, everything I had built. Damien stood up. He towered over me, his imposing figure casting a shadow that made my anger flare. He put a hand on my shoulder. I wanted to break it off. You've always been like this, Parker, he said, his voice low and mocking. Comfortable with mediocrity. Content with the scraps. It's in your blood. You're a weakling. Always have been. I shoved his hand off. Get out of my apartment. Sienna stood up too, her arms crossed. This is my apartment too, she said, her words as sharp as a blade. And actually, I think you should leave. The words hit me like a slap in the face. It wasn't real. This couldn't be real. I looked between them, between her and him, as they stood there, not even fazed by the chaos they just caused. You've been dragging her down, Damien continued, his voice filled with faux sympathy. She deserves better than this. Better than you. I wanted to scream. To shout. To rage. But instead, I stood there, just watching as they continued to humiliate me. And then Sienna said it. The words I would never forget. We're done, Parker. I couldn't breathe. You're just going to throw away 18 months for him? Sienna didn't even hesitate. It's been over for months. He's right, she said, her voice as cold as ice. You've been stuck, trapped in your own mediocrity. I need someone who can actually take care of me. I felt the blood drain from my face. Damien smiled. There's your answer, little brother. She needs a real man. Not someone who's stuck working a dead-end job. It felt like the ground had been ripped out from under me. Everything, all of it, was gone in an instant. My relationship, my home, my dignity. I looked at them one last time before I grabbed a few of my things. Clothes. Photos of my parents. A few small things that somehow still felt like mine. As I packed up, they watched me. Quiet. Calm. Like they were waiting for me to break. You'll be fine, Parker, Damien called out as I reached the door. There's always a way back from this. I didn't respond. I didn't have the strength to. I just walked out of the apartment and into the unknown. I don't remember how I got to my buddy Mike's place that night. The drive was a blur, just endless hours of staring through the windshield, hoping the world would stop spinning. By the time I arrived, it was almost 3 a.m. Mike was asleep when I knocked, but he didn't hesitate to let me in once he saw the look on my face. "You okay, man?" he asked, rubbing his eyes. I just shook my head. I couldn't answer. Words felt foreign. I sank into the couch, staring blankly ahead. He knew better than to ask any more questions. The next morning, I woke up to an empty house. Mike had left for work early, probably sensing I needed space. His couch wasn't a cure-all, but it was a small comfort. I still hadn't processed what had happened, everything from the betrayal to the humiliation. But I knew one thing for sure, I wasn't going back. Not to the apartment. Not to her. Not to him. I spent the next few days in a haze of numbness. I couldn't focus. I could barely sleep. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw her face. Her dismissal of me was so effortless, so cold. She didn't even flinch when she kicked me out. I didn't even get a goodbye. Just, gone. I tried calling her. My hands shook as I dialed. 21 missed calls. 17 texts. The messages from her were frantic, pleading, begging me to answer. But the truth was, I didn't care. I couldn't care anymore. I wanted to leave it all behind. But I didn't. I sat there, scrolling through her texts, reading her desperate pleas for forgiveness. It was the same old story. She had been confused, she claimed. She was sorry. She didn't know how it had gotten this far. I couldn't help but laugh bitterly. Sorry for what? For lying to me for months? For betraying me with my brother? There was one text I couldn't quite shake, though. The one that stood out like a sore thumb. Please answer, Parker. I made a mistake. It was never supposed to go this far. A mistake. A mistake? The rage began to build again, like a slow-burning fuse. But this time, it wasn't the red-hot fury of someone who'd been blindsided. No, this time, it was different. This was cold. Calculated. I wasn't going to be the fool. Not anymore. I'd spent so many years being the good guy, the one who put up with all the disrespect in the games. I had always been the one who took the high road, who tried to fix things when they broke, who never raised his voice, never fought back. Always calm. Always patient. But now I was done being patient. I turned to my laptop, pulling up a fresh browser window. I didn't know what I was looking for at first, but I knew I needed answers. So, I searched for her. Sienna. All of it. Every post, every picture, every conversation she'd ever had. Her entire life, the one I'd never really been a part of. The one I had unknowingly let slip through my fingers. It wasn't hard to find. She hadn't exactly been subtle about it. Her social media was filled with pictures of Damien, her best friend from work, the one she'd always laughed too hard at. Funny how that best friend had turned out to be the man who had taken everything from me. I scrolled through their messages. Texts, DMs, even a few snaps that sent a chill down my spine. They were talking, planning, flirting. I found the thread that made my stomach twist. Damien, I'm telling you, Parker won't even know what hit him. It'll be too easy. And when I take her, he won't even be able to fight back. It's like taking candy from a baby. Damien, exactly. I want to see his face when he realizes I've taken everything. The promotion, the girl, the life he thought he had. My fingers froze on the keyboard as I stared at the screen. The words were searing, burning into my mind. The girl. The life he thought he had. It was never about her. It was never about us. It had always been a game to Damien. A game to see how far he could push me, how much he could take from me before I snapped. And I hadn't snapped yet. But I would. I sat back, a plan beginning to take shape in my mind. This wasn't about revenge. Not really. This was about control. This was about showing them who I really was. They thought they knew me, the quiet one. The weakling. The guy who could be pushed around. But they had never seen me like this. I started to dig deeper. I pulled up her phone records, her emails. It wasn't difficult. She had been too careless. Too trusting. Just like Damien had. I found everything. The messages. The plans. The dirty little lies they had told, the secret meetings she thought I didn't know about. And then I found it, the one thing that would undo everything. Her backup. It wasn't just her phone, or her messages. It was everything. The entire history of her life, stored away on an old iPad. The one she thought she had forgotten about. The one I had once given her as a Christmas gift. The one I hadn't touched in months. I picked it up and powered it on. It was still logged into her iCloud. Still had everything she had ever done. Every word she had ever said to Damien. I had just found my ticket out of this mess. And I wasn't going to let it go to waste. The next few days were a blur of sleepless nights and sharp, focused moments where everything seemed to fall into place. I hardly left the motel, staying up late, scrolling through Sienna's past, studying every interaction, every breadcrumb she had left behind. It wasn't just about revenge anymore. No, it was something far more dangerous. I was in control now, and the feeling was intoxicating. I had everything I needed. All the evidence. All the receipts. Everything I could possibly use to turn their world upside down. But even as I prepared to strike, there was a part of me that was unsure. Could I really do it? Could I dismantle the lives of the people I thought I loved? I had no choice. This wasn't about them anymore. It was about me. About showing them who I really was, the one they underestimated. The one they thought they could break without consequences. I spent the following week in a frenzy, getting everything organized. I didn't have much money, but I didn't need much. I had something far more valuable now, leverage. And I was going to use it all. The first thing I did was call in sick for work. I had to clear my head. I needed to see things clearly. So, I took 2 days off, holed up in my motel room, and began sorting through the piles of screenshots, messages, and photos. I organized them meticulously into folders. Each one had a purpose. I wasn't just going to destroy Damien's reputation, I was going to methodically ruin everything he held dear. His promotion. His relationship with Sienna. His carefully constructed image as the golden child. I started with the easiest target, Meline. Meline was Damien's fiancée, the one he had been flaunting around like a trophy. The one he had used to make me feel small for years. I knew that if there was anyone who would be most affected by the truth, it was her. The perfect fiancée, with the perfect life, completely unaware of the man she was marrying. I had her email address, one of the perks of having Sienna's iCloud account. I had also found out that she was obsessively checking her inbox about their wedding details. She'd been anxiously planning every detail. I imagined her sitting there, daydreaming about the perfect day, while Damien was making plans behind her back. I drafted the email with precision, each word chosen carefully to make sure the message would land. Subject: a favor, if you don't mind. Meline. I hope this message finds you well. I know we've met a few times, and I believe you deserve to know something important about your fiancé, Damien. I'm sure you've heard of me. I'm Parker, his younger brother. I don't want to disrupt your world, but you deserve to know who you're marrying. There's something you should see, something that Damien has been hiding from you for quite a while. Attached are screenshots of conversations between Damien and my ex-girlfriend, Sienna. They've been involved with each other for months, behind your back, behind mine. You're not the first one he's deceived. If you want to see the truth, here it is. Parker. I sent it, hitting send with a strange sense of finality. I didn't expect her to reply right away. In fact, I wasn't sure how she'd react. Would she be shocked? Would she believe me? The uncertainty gnawed at me, but it didn't matter. She had to know. The next part of my plan was more delicate. It involved someone far more dangerous than Meline, Uncle Edwin. Uncle Edwin was a pillar in our family. A successful businessman, respected in the community, and more importantly, Damien's greatest supporter. The one who believed in him, the one who thought he could do no wrong. He was the key to Damien's promotion, the man who would ultimately decide if he would get what he wanted, the big break, the position at the top. But Uncle Edwin didn't know Damien as well as he thought. No one did. I made an appointment to meet him at his country club. I'd never been a fan of the place, but it was the best place to have a quiet conversation where no one would overhear. I needed to plant the seeds of doubt in his mind, and I knew exactly how to do it. When I arrived, Edwin was waiting for me at the bar. He looked exactly like I remembered, tall, imposing, with the same sharp suit he always wore. He smiled when he saw me, but there was something cold behind his eyes. Parker, he said, his voice smooth. Good to see you, son. I hear things are going well for you. How's work? I sat down, taking a deep breath. Work's good. You know, just plugging along. But that's actually what I wanted to talk to you about. About Damien. His eyes hardened. He knew something was coming. What about Damien? He asked, swirling his drink. I leaned in, making sure my voice was low. I heard some rumors, Uncle. About how he got the Northfield account. People are talking about how he might have taken credit for someone else's work. I don't know if that's true, but I thought you should know. His eyes narrowed, the ice in his drink clinking as he set it down on the table. What are you implying, Parker? I'm just saying, I continued, my voice steady, there are whispers about him using company resources for personal matters. Nothing illegal, but ethically questionable. Edwin didn't respond immediately. His face was unreadable, but I could tell the wheels were turning. He didn't like hearing this, but he didn't outright dismiss it either. "I'll look into it," he said finally, his voice clipped. I nodded, trying to keep the satisfaction from showing on my face. I could see it already, the seeds of doubt taking root. It was only a matter of time before it all unraveled. Later that night, I sat alone in my motel room, the weight of my actions settling in. I had no illusions. This wouldn't be easy. Damien was powerful, manipulative. But I wasn't the same person who had left the apartment that day. I had learned something important during those days of planning, those sleepless nights of sifting through the wreckage they left behind. Quiet didn't mean weak. It meant patience. And patience was about to pay off. The next few days felt like the calm before a storm. I had done what I set out to do. I had shattered Damien's illusion of perfection. The seeds of doubt had been planted in Uncle Edwin's mind, and Meline was now grappling with the truth. But despite everything I had accomplished, there was one nagging thought that lingered at the back of my mind. What if it wasn't enough? I couldn't let go of that fear, the fear that my revenge wouldn't be as satisfying as I imagined. That despite everything, Damien would somehow wiggle out of it. He always had. His whole life had been a series of manipulations and false facades, and I was starting to think that this would just be another instance of him slipping away unscathed. Then, late one night, just as I was beginning to lose myself in doubt, I received a call. It was from Mike. "Parker," he said, his voice frantic, "I don't know how to tell you this, but I think your brother's been playing you the whole time." "What are you talking about?" I asked, the confusion lacing my voice. Mike hesitated before speaking. "I've been going through some stuff in my garage, and I found something I think you need to see. It's about your brother and Sienna." My heart raced. What did Mike know that I didn't? "I'll be over in 20 minutes, I said, hanging up before he could say another word. When I arrived at Mike's place, his usual laid-back demeanor was nowhere to be found. He was pacing, his hands running through his hair. "What did you find?" I demanded, anxiety tightening in my chest. Mike led me to the back of his garage, where he had a small office set up. He pulled a box from under a desk, one that looked like it had been sitting there for a while. He opened it and handed me a stack of papers. I looked down at them and froze. It was a set of financial documents, transactions, bank statements, receipts. Everything pointed to one thing: Sienna had been involved in a much larger scheme than I had realized. There were wire transfers between her and Damien, but they weren't small amounts. These were big numbers. Not only had she been cheating on me with my brother, but she had also been helping him cover up his financial indiscretions. I looked up at Mike, my mind spinning. This can't be real. How long has this been going on? "Months," Mike said, his voice grim. "I'm guessing this is why she was so distracted all that time. She's been helping him launder money. All those late nights you mentioned? She wasn't working. She was hiding this." The walls around me seemed to close in. I felt the blood drain from my face. This wasn't just a betrayal of love. It was much bigger than that. My brother and Sienna had been partners in crime, working together to exploit everything they could. I needed answers. But there was only one person who had the full picture, and that person was Sienna. The next morning, I stood in front of her apartment building, my hands shaking with anticipation. The weight of what I had uncovered gnawed me, but I was no longer angry. No, I was beyond that. I was focused. I knew exactly what I needed to do. I knocked on her door, my heart hammering in my chest. She opened the door slowly, her face pale, eyes swollen from days of crying over the mess she had caused. "Parker," she whispered, her voice barely audible. "Don't say anything," I cut her off, stepping inside before she could try to spin another lie. "I know everything. About you and Damien. The money, the lies, the betrayal. All of it." Her face went white, her eyes darting nervously toward the door, as if she thought she could run. But there was nowhere left to hide. "I didn't mean for it to happen this way," she began, her voice trembling. "I never meant to hurt you. Damien, stop." I raised a hand to silence her. "You didn't mean to hurt me? You've been lying to me for months, Sienna. You helped him cover up everything. You were his accomplice." She sank into a chair, her face crumpling with guilt. "I'm sorry. I never wanted any of this. Damien made me feel like I had no choice. He manipulated me into doing it." I scoffed. "Manipulated? He's been manipulating me my whole life, and now you're telling me you were a victim too?" "I wasn't a victim, Parker. I was weak," she whispered, tears streaming down her face. "I thought if I helped him, I'd get the life I wanted. But now, everything is ruined. I looked at her, my heart cold. You really thought I wouldn't find out? You thought I'd just sit back and let you play me like this? She nodded, defeated. I didn't think you'd ever leave me. Damien made it clear that you'd never find anyone else, that you'd always be the weak one. But her voice cracked. I never thought you'd be capable of doing what you've done. Capable of what? I asked, my anger rising again. Of finally standing up for myself? Of fighting back? She didn't respond. Instead, she just sat there, her face pale, her body hunched in shame. That's it, then, I said, my voice flat. You and Damien have made your choice. Now, I'm making mine. I left her apartment feeling like I had finally come to terms with everything. The lies, the betrayal, the endless manipulation. For the first time, I didn't feel lost. I felt powerful. But then I got the call. It was from Uncle Edwin. Parker, he said, his voice tight with tension. We need to talk. Now. I showed up at Uncle Edwin's office, my mind racing with confusion. What did he want now? Had he found out about Damien's indiscretions? When I arrived, Uncle Edwin was sitting at his desk, his face a mixture of disappointment and something darker. You've done a lot, Parker, he said, his voice steady but laced with warning. But you've made a grave mistake. I narrowed my eyes. What are you talking about? He slid a piece of paper across the desk. It was a confession from Sienna. I had her sign it, Edwin continued, his eyes cold. She confessed to everything. The money laundering, the affair, and most importantly, she confessed that you knew all along. My stomach dropped. What the hell? I whispered, my throat tightening. She's been playing you the whole time, Parker, Edwin said, his gaze piercing. She was never going to choose you. She was always after something bigger, something more than you could give her. And now, you've handed me the perfect opportunity to make sure Damien never gets the promotion. I sat frozen, processing his words, the pieces of the puzzle coming together. Uncle Edwin wasn't on my side. He was on his own. And I had just walked right into his trap. The room felt suffocating. The walls seemed to close in on me as Uncle Edwin's words hung in the air, his confession a sickening twist in the already convoluted mess of my life. I couldn't breathe. I couldn't think. My hands were trembling as I reached for the confession Sienna had supposedly signed. I stared at it. It wasn't her handwriting. It was clean, sharp, and definitely not the kind of thing Sienna would have written in a million years. I looked up at Uncle Edwin. This is a lie. You've made her sign this. She didn't do it willingly. He smirked, leaning back in his chair with a confidence I hadn't seen before. You're wrong, Parker. She signed it herself. Sienna has been playing both sides this whole time. And you? You've been played right along with her. A knot formed in my chest. You're telling me you both, used me? He laughed, a low, almost pitying sound. Not just you, Parker. Everyone. You were just the easiest target. I couldn't move, couldn't speak. The room seemed to spin as the weight of the revelation hit me. Everything, my quiet life, my relationship, my family dynamics had been a facade built by them. It wasn't just about revenge anymore, this was about control, manipulation, power. And they had been orchestrating it all, pulling the strings from behind the scenes. You're all sick, I finally managed to say, my voice hoarse with disbelief. And now you think you've won. Oh, Parker, Edwin said, his eyes narrowing. The game is far from over. You may have had your moment of glory, but it's nothing compared to the storm I'm about to unleash. I stood up, my chest heaving with anger, the adrenaline surging through my veins. You think you're untouchable? You think this is your victory? You're wrong. Edwin's smirk faded for a split second. Oh, no, Parker. I'm not just untouchable. I'm untouchable because I control everything. You think you're the first to play me? Think again. I felt my stomach lurch as his words sank in, but before I could respond, the door to the office burst open. A man I didn't recognize stepped in, his presence commanding. He was tall, well-dressed, with an air of authority that made me instinctively take a step back. Uncle Edwin's face paled slightly as the man approached. He didn't seem worried, but there was an edge to his composure that set my nerves on fire. Edwin, the man said coolly, it's time. We need to talk about your future. I turned to Edwin, his expression unreadable, and suddenly everything clicked. This wasn't just about Damien. It wasn't just about Sienna or even me. This was something much bigger, something I had unknowingly stepped into. I've been looking into your little empire, Edwin, the man continued. All your dirty little secrets. The things you've been hiding. The things you thought you could control. Not now, Vincent, Edwin snapped, but his voice had lost the usual edge of confidence. He was rattled. Vincent? My mind raced. Vincent, that name was familiar. I had heard it somewhere. I turned to look at Edwin's face, the panic creeping into his expression. The walls were closing in around him now. It wasn't just his business that was at stake, it was his life. Don't be stupid, the man, Vincent, said, shaking his head in disgust. You've made too many enemies. You've crossed too many lines. And I'm here to make sure you pay the price. What do you want? Edwin's voice was tight with fear now, the cracks in his facade starting to show. Vincent turned to me, his eyes locking onto mine for the first time. I want to make sure that the right person gets what they deserve. I could feel the hairs on the back of my neck stand up. This wasn't just about family. This wasn't just about a promotion. This was about something far more dangerous. Vincent wasn't here by coincidence. He was the shadow in the background of everything Edwin had built. I've been watching you, Vincent said, stepping toward me. You're a pawn in their game, but you don't need to be. You're smarter than they give you credit for. You've got fire in you. Power. I felt a surge of disbelief, followed by something else, curiosity. Vincent continued, his voice lowering to a conspiratorial tone. You see, Parker, the one thing Edwin and your brother don't realize is that they're not in control. They think they are, but the truth is, they've been running this little game on borrowed time. What do you mean? I asked, my mind racing. Edwin's been stealing. From the company, from people who trusted him. He thought he could get away with it. But now it's time for him to fall. And when he does, his empire will crumble, and I'm going to be the one who makes sure of it. I stepped back, everything shifting around me. It wasn't just about Damien anymore. It wasn't just about revenge. This was a battle for power, a war I had unknowingly been dragged into. Vincent stepped closer, his voice cold but with an edge of respect. And you, Parker. You've got a choice. You can stay on the sidelines, let them continue to manipulate you, or you can be the one to pull the trigger. You can take them all down. You can be the one who wins. A wave of realization hit me. Vincent wasn't offering me a way out. He was offering me control. I want in, I said before I could stop myself. The final decision was made, but everything about the situation had changed. Uncle Edwin had underestimated me. So had Damien. So had Sienna. They all thought they had the game figured out, but they didn't know the new rules. And now, the stakes had never been higher. Vincent's involvement changed everything. What had started as a desire for revenge now became an intricate play of power, and I was no longer the pawn in their game. I was the one who would decide who won and who lost. The following days were a whirlwind. I spent hours with Vincent, learning the deeper layers of Edwin's empire, and slowly, I realized just how much I could manipulate. The pieces on the chessboard were all there, and for the first time in my life, I knew exactly how to play. When the day came, it wasn't just about taking down Damien. It was about tearing down everything they had built, everything they had used to control me. Uncle Edwin's fall would be swift. Sienna would be left to deal with the aftermath. And Damien? He would finally learn what it meant to be the one who had nothing left. And when they came to me, begging for mercy, I would be the one to decide their fate. Because now, I wasn't the weakling anymore. I was the one in control.